Right, I think we're on live now. Yeah, Peter.
Yeah, ready now, Chair.
Right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this meeting. Can I call this meeting in order? I'd like to welcome you to this meeting of Planning and Licensing Committee. I am the Chair, Councillor Shakil Ahmed. Before we start, could I ask the clerk to notify the committee of any apologies received to introduce the members of the committee and the officer who are in attendance?
Yes, Chair, we've had apologies from Councillor Amna Mir. I believe Councillor Wazir sent his apologies as well, or possibly has if he's not in attendance.
Yeah.
With us tonight, Chair, there's Councillor Burke, Councillor Rush, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Zaman, Councillor Zahir, Councillor Rana, Councillor Rashid, Councillor Massey, Councillor Davidson, Councillor Winkler and Councillor O'Neill. Officers, we've got Daniela Ripper, Mr. Patel from the Planning Department, Zainab Latif, Lorraine Adams and Snowbert Baig from Legal Services.
Chair, Councillor Wazir gave me his apologies to give to the meeting.
Thank you. This meeting is being held via Zoom, and I should first advise members of the committee that this meeting is being streamed live on Council YouTube channel. Therefore, members need to be aware that any inappropriate language or comments will be picked up and broadcasted. Such comment could cause embarrassment to the member concerned and also to the council. When members have finished speaking, please can they remember to press the mute button. A member of the committee service team may do this for you if you fail to do so. Please could I ask the members that either they turn off or mute their mobile phones. This meeting is open to public, but it is not public meeting, and the following procedure will apply. I will introduce the application. The planning officer will provide an update if appropriate. The committee may question the planning officer. The objector, the application, or the representative may address the committee for maximum 5 minutes. Objector are asked to nominate one or more person to represent you. If more than one person is addressing the committee, the 5 minutes that you have been allocated will be shared between you. The committee then questions the objectors or the planning officer regarding the comments. The applicant or the representative may address the committee for a maximum of 5 minutes. The committee then questions the applicant or planning officer regarding the comments made. Any ward councillor may then address the committee and may prevent to question the ward councillor or the planning officer regarding the comments made. Members are reminded that they need to be present and visible during the consideration of planning application. If the members goes off a period of time during consideration of application, they will not be allowed to vote on the application. The committee will then discuss the application. The decision will be made. I will read out a proposal resolution before the committee votes on the decision will be conducted by means of roll call of the members present, which will be read out by the clerk. Each member will be asked if they wish to support, reject, or abstain regarding the proposal that being voted. And just remind the members, the chat box at the bottom is only used for comment and question. So there's no other comments allowed on there. This goes live, as well as some people don't have the facility to see you on the visible, so it's recorded as well. So just remind you of that. So apologies, we already done. Minutes of last meeting on page 3 to 5. And Diana will update some questions she has. I think everybody received email regarding that.
Just
Okay,
after
Diana.
that, Chair. The minutes of the meeting refer to an application that was considered at the previous committee in January, which was for 36 Northford Way. I'd just like to just provide the opportunity for members to clarify the relevant policies and guidance that were being referred to in the decision, so that these could be recorded as part of the minutes.
Councillor, anybody else want to come? Councillor Phil Burke, I think you proposed the last application.
I did, Chair, did propose the last application. I have nothing further to add.
But did you read the email?
I did, Chair.
Okay. Daniel, did you?
It's just to put it forward for members to possibly add the relevant policies. Planning reasons were given, and they do relate to policies in the core strategy,
They
but
do.
it's for members to maybe name those policies if they want them recorded with the decision. Obviously, the decision was to refuse planning permission, and an inspector considering that refusal on appeal would ordinarily refer to the policies in the development plan as part of that appeal. They provide obviously the full reasoning behind the recommendations that the committee made. So it's often referred to by the members in decision making. I'd just like to provide the opportunity for the members to provide the policies.
Yeah, could I ask the planning officer, please, to go through the reasons again, the planning reasons she mentioned in the email? Could she just go through them again, please, for the information of other members of the public, Chair? Thank you. Or for the other members of the committee, Chair.
Yes, of course. Yes. So if you turn to the minutes of the agenda item covering the minutes, you'll see on there the reasons that were given by the committee in reaching the decision. So on page 4, the committee resolved to refuse planning permission due to loss of privacy, overbearing impact to the residents and to the immediate sides of 36 Norfolk Way, and the development being out of character for the street. Now, in the council's core strategy, there are policies that cover these harms that the committee have referred to, and obviously it's open for the committee to name those policies so the inspector can consider the policies in full on the appeal.
Yeah, I think the members made the decision on that day, and Councillor Philbert clearly gave some reason for refusal there, and the officer, we expect the officers to get the paragraph or the document detail or SPD, whatever is there. We need to have that, and in this case, I think it is what I can see there. I think is quite valid in the email as a reason.
It's just one of you member need to refer with the reason, one of them reason, that's all.
Can we
So
put
if you refer one of the reason, that's is going to be noted. This is for the record of if this application goes to the appeal, then that's why we need to make it clear when when you're refusing application on any grounds.
Chair, put DM1
you need to be paragraph. Yeah.
Put DM1 and P3 then, Chair.
Yes,
Yeah, that'll be fine. But in the future, can you do make a clear reason so it goes in the minutes? That's all it was. Irene Davison, did you want to?
It's just been done. I was just going to say D1 and P3. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. That's what we want. That's what the clarification was. Right. Okay, that's fine. Minutes. Everybody moves the minutes. Yes.
I move, Chair. Yeah. A second.
Declaration of interest. No. Urgent item of business.
Sorry, Chair. I think Councillor Zaman wanted to ask a question on it.
No, it's okay, Chair. I think you have agreed. We can carry on.
Okay, thank you. Right, we on land review. We're going to item 5 now, which is the land on 25 Ings Way, and I'm gonna just read you the application number is 20/00713. Full township is Rochdale, as is Castleton Ward. And Daniel, did you want to update with that?
Chair, can I ask a question, please, before you move on to that?
What question?
Chair, is this a routine application or is it an urgent application, Chair?
This is routine.
There's only one application on the agenda, Chair, today.
That's what we're going through.
Right. So just my question is that we got so many people on this call, 21 of them, us, and there's only one application. Could it not be better if we have a few more applications together and then hear them?
No, this is application. We need to. We don't have to wait for application. Whatever's ready, we need to move on with it.
I understand, Chair, but you know, I'm just pointing out.
Yeah, that's fine with your point, but that's how it works. If there is a application that needs to be considered, we need to consider. Right. Okay. Daniel, did you want to update on that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. I have an update on the application which was published to the council's website this afternoon. I just wanted to run through that briefly, and then I'll pass over to the planning officer who's going to present the presentation for the members. The update report refers to the Equality Act and the Public Sector Equality Duty, the three elements of which are set out on the report on page 2. The council and therefore the committee as decision maker is required to have due regard to the needs identified, and the update report therefore includes the officer's assessment of the duty imposed by the Equalities Act. I'm sure all members are familiar with the Equalities Act, and you will see it obviously referred to in various reports that the council produces. The update report effectively includes the text of the relevant policies of the NPPF, the core strategy and the NPPG. The NPPG, the National Planning Practice Guidance produced by the government, includes a section on housing for older people and also disabled people, and it specifies that bungalows are a general housing type rather than a specialist housing type. As the application hasn't been submitted on the basis that the bungalow will be made available exclusively to persons over 55 or persons with a disability, albeit it is referred to in the calling, it's considered that persons with a protected characteristic under the Act are not disproportionately affected by a decision. The final part of the update refers to matters that members may wish to consider in the event an age restriction was proposed or put forward by the applicant. Because at that point in time, a bungalow can form specialist housing for older people if the restriction is imposed. So that would require engagement with the Act. Now, just moving on, the recommendation is to refuse planning permissions for the reasons set out in the agenda pack. However, I'd just like to bring to the attention of the committee that a report on drainage and land stability has not been submitted with the application. Now, the National Planning Practice Guidance does require that land stability is assessed by the applicant with a preliminary report from a suitably qualified person in advance of a decision to grant permission. So in the event members intend to depart from the recommendation to refuse, a land stability and drainage report would be required, and this is not something that we could require by condition of the permission. So if a member does propose that recommendation, maybe to grant planning permission, this should be a minded to grant resolution, subject to the submission of this report in advance of any formal decision. The proposer would also be asked, obviously, for the reasons if they were to take a decision contrary to the recommendation, and I'll also just be asking for clarification on any policies and guidance that members might be referring to in that reason at the time. Okay, thank you, Chair. Over to the planning officer for the presentation.
Okay, Council Mobeen Mattel.
Thank you very much, Chair, and hello, councillors. I'll try and share my screen if you just bear with me.
Yeah, can see your screen now.
Can you see my screen? Excellent. And okay, it's agenda item 5. The site is land to the rear of 19 to 25 Innings Way, and the proposal is for the erection of one bungalow. This shows the site location outlined in red. It's to the rear of the properties on Innings Way, and it's set back 25 metres from the highway of Innings Way. This is an aerial image. Allotments are located to the south and east of the site. This is also protected open land, and so is the site itself. This is a photo showing the entrance into the site between numbers 23 and 25 Innings Way. Access into the site would be over a private car park. So this slide shows the entrance into the site. This is the car park. The bungalow would be positioned behind the timber fencing. It would be cut into the existing banking The planning statement submitted states that the bungalow would be constructed 0.5 metres above the land level of the car park. So this photo shows the car parking area taken from the site looking out across the car park to the highway of Innings Way. This is a site layout, shows the existing car parking area, which would be rearranged to retain parking for numbers 21, 23 and 25 Innings Way. The front elevation would face northeast. Parking for the bungalow would be provided to the front. It should be noted that an application for 3 dwellings was submitted by the applicant on plot A earlier in 2020. This was viewed as an infill development between buildings and is supported by policy and was approved by the council. The floor plan and elevations shows it's a simple design. The bungalow would provide 3 bedrooms, separate living room, kitchen and dining area. Now, in terms of the bungalow itself, it's a relatively simple design. It's an acceptable in terms of its appearance. There are a number of trees on site, and it would be possible to retain these trees, and 2 trees would be planted as part of this application. GMEU have raised no objections to the application. The distance from the windows in its side elevation to the properties on Innings Way would be compatible with the surrounding separation distances, and no objections are raised relating to parking. So the recommendation is to refuse the application. It would encroach into protected open land. It would be a form of backland development sited to the rear of an existing car park. It would be at odds with the established pattern of development in the area. As such, it would be an isolated development relating poorly with its surroundings. The council also provided pre-application advice in April 2020, stating that we would not support such an application on protected open land, given its encroachment and isolated position. Again, no evidence is provided to demonstrate urban brownfield and greenfield sites are not available for this kind of development. Development should be directed within the urban boundary, and as such, the development would have an adverse impact on the character of the surrounding area, and would not meet policy and guidance. Thank you.
Okay. If you move your screen, then if I'll ask the members. Right, I've got Councillor John Taylor. Anybody else? Sean Neil.
Councillor Burke, Chair.
Phil Burke. Right, John Taylor.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. I'm just wondering about the private car park. Could the owner of that land prevent or restrict access to the house if it was built?
So yeah, objections were raised in relation to the crossing of the private car park. Great Places Housing state they own the land, and they would not allow access through the car park at this moment. However, this would be viewed as a private matter, and circumstances could change in the future where access is agreed between parties.
Okay, but as it stands at the moment, if the house was built and there was an emergency and the fire brigade or whatever had to go, there could be an issue with access.
Yeah, but that would be a private matter.
Okay.
It would not be a planning
Thank
consideration. Thank you.
He might not, just clarify, he might not build until he gets the permission from the car park.
That's correct.
Yeah. I've got Councillor Sean Neil.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like a bit of clarification on that term, what you use about protected open land, because in the past, you know, it's got a bit of a double-edged sword, this phrase, that it could be protected for development rather than protected against development. Could you just clarify in this situation what it actually means and what it could mean?
Yeah, in this instance, protected open land contributes to the character of the urban edge. It provides a sense of relief from built development, and this development would encroach into this space. So it's not protected for development itself. It's protected from development, as it's a sense of relief from the built development, if that makes sense.
Okay, I've got Phil Burke and then Peter
Yes,
Rush.
thank you.
Thanks, Chair. It's just in relation to the application what got made last year where they granted properties being built last year. Was they also on protected open land? And if so, what's the difference with this application? And also, if Great Places was to be stubborn and not allow access, would there be another access point for this bungalow?
I don't know the application you're talking about in terms of the protected open land, but I did look into the issue of the 35 dwellings which were approved at Innings Way. That development was made in 2011. That also was on protected open land, and it also had improvements to sports facilities, improvements to its car park, the drainage and fencing. So it was approved on the basis that the harm would be outweighed by the benefits arising from the scheme by improvements to the sports facilities, and it was compatible with its surroundings. This development would be an isolated backland development with access provided through a private car park, and in all it would cause significant harm.
I can supplement on the additional questions that members have asked in relation to the protected open land, because obviously the committee have seen a number of different applications on protected open land historically, including the one the case officer has just referred to in respect of Innings Way itself. There have been a number of different decisions taken at different times. The current policy position is the council has a 5-year supply of housing land, and therefore at this moment in time protected open land on this particular site does not need to come forward for this type of development. Obviously that's something that members will consider on a case-by-case basis, but in this particular site it is located to the back of a car park as the officer has suggested, so it's not considered necessary to release this for the development that's proposed.
Chair,
Okay,
can I pick up on the access point, please?
Yes, Lauren. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just to say, it's obviously the report states that there's access arrangements would be needed to cross the car park, and that obviously is via third-party land. These access arrangements, as is pointed out, would be a private matter. However, access to the site is necessary, and the planning practice guidance advises the use of what is known as Grampian conditions, which some of members will know about, and that can be used in circumstances where the land is not controlled by the applicant. So basically that is a negatively worded condition which prohibits development and until a specified step has been taken. And so in this case that would be the submission of a scheme for the provision of access from the site from Innings Way for vehicles and pedestrians, and it would also need to provide satisfactory evidence that the site benefits from sufficient rights to enable the development to be accessed and serviced. Now, as I understand it, the owners of the car park have said, they won't allow it, but as the officers point out, in the future, that could change, and the case law on this has established that the mere fact that a desirable a condition that is worded in a negative form appears to have no reasonable prospect of fulfilment, it doesn't mean that the planning permission should necessarily be refused as a matter of law. In other words, we can place on it a Grampian condition, and that is what, if members are minded to approve, that is what members should do, place a Grampian condition on it to deal with the access provision, so that no development takes place until those access arrangements have been agreed.
Thank you, Lauren. I've got Peter Roche, Councillor Zaman, and then Peter Winkler. Councillor Peter Roche.
Thank you very much. My question was that Phil Burke put forward, Councillor Burke, on this protected open land where other houses were built previously. And one comment of the officer were to assist in the sporting facility. Is the sporting facility Councillor Gabriel's?
Sorry, can you repeat the question towards the end, please?
Yeah,
Is
you
the
mentioned in your address that it's the sporting facility. Am I right in thinking that?
yeah, the sports facilities, yes.
And where were the sports facilities?
That was a previous application.
That was the
not-
previous application in
not this
2011.
for not this bungalow.
Yeah, okay,
Peter.
where were they? The Councillor Gabriel's?
I haven't looked into the details, but I'm presuming there is a development nearby
Yeah,
for a
that's
sports facility, and the officer's report mentioned that the scheme would provide significant benefits in terms of sports facilities, and that's the reasoning behind the decision.
Well, the distance between the other houses that were built in protected open land, there's not a couple of metres difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I've got Councillor Zaman and then Peter Winkler.
Thank you, Chair. Lorraine Adams has partly answered my question. I was going to ask about right of way. But recently, through the local government newsletter we receive every week, there has been some flexibility on plannings. They're saying that we are making it easy. But if this application, if we refuse it, and if this application goes to appeal process, what is going to be the likely outcome?
In terms,
Chair, do you want us to take that question now, or do you want to?
I think I would better leave that question later on. That's something you can raise later on. Peter Winkler, can you please keep your question to the related updates and sector? Peter Winkler.
Sorry, thank you. Just turning my mic on. My question relates to the map in the agenda pack that I've got. It shows the plan for where the development is proposed, and we're talking about access through the car park. Obviously, that would have to be agreed, as we've discussed. If we were to approve this application and access were not able to be agreed through the car park, what I can't see from the map, what options would the applicant have to start trying to seek access from another point around? Because there seems to be a lot of open space that they could try and bring access routes in from other areas. Is that an option at all?
Hi, Peter, I'll take that one. It's very unlikely that there could be any alternative means of access to the site. The reason being, as the officer outlined, there are some allotments to the rear, and there are quite a few levels changes between the site of the application and also the allotments. So the allotments are raised up quite a few metres above. So there isn't any other feasible means of access, but obviously the applicant's representative is here, so perhaps they could answer that question as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else for officer question? Okay. Right. Thank you. Is objector here?
No objectors in attendance, Chair.
Right. Okay, that's fine. The applicant here?
Yeah, the applicant and his agent, Mr. Charlton, are here, Chair.
Mr. Charlton?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. My name is Alan Charlton. I'm a planning consultant and I represent the applicants in support of the proposal. The officer's report refers to UDP and core strategy policies that restrict development in protected open land and open land outside the defined urban area. On the Rochdale proposals map, the land is clearly outside the defined urban area. Well, this boundary was drawn before the houses on Keswick Avenue and Innings Way were built. The situation has clearly changed since the map was drawn up, and on the ground, it is quite clear that the urban boundary now follows the built development as opposed to that shown on the proposals map. Again, the Keswick Avenue and Innings Way development has been approved and built on protected open land. In September last year, approval was granted, this has been referred to earlier, for 3 houses between 5 and 7 Innings Way, again on protected land. The council has then already granted planning permission for large-scale development on this protected open area and outside the urban boundary. The principle then, in my view, has clearly been established, and the bungalow proposal should be treated the same as the previous development. The planning office is referred to infill development, referred to in planning policies on other protected open land. The term infill does not just apply to filling a gap between existing buildings, but is more widely applied to small areas of land close to groups of existing buildings. The wording of the Rochdale UDP policy on exemptions to protected open land states when new buildings are permitted, they should be sited to form a group within existing buildings. This, in my view, demonstrates the wider interpretation of the term infill. Looking now to the Innings Way street scene, it consists of a regular visual rhythm of two-storey houses. The bungalow is situated well away from the line of houses in Innings Way and does not interrupt the visual rhythm in any way. In addition, the bungalow will be set into the existing slope of the land to a similar level, not more than 1.5 metres higher than the properties on Innings Way. And because of this, it will not be obtrusive when viewed from the open space at the rear to the east, because it's at the lower level. Chair, I would also draw attention to the need to make sure that there is a wide choice of housing within the borough, in particular for elderly people. This is highlighted in Rochdale Core Strategies Policy C3, entitled Delivering the Right Kinds of Housing. It states, the population aged 65 or over in Rochdale Borough is expected to increase by 34% between 2012 and 2028, and therefore meeting the needs of older people in terms of housing provision will become increasingly important. There is a national shortage of bungalows. Very few bungalows are now being built, which is contrary to the needs of the population in general. As the upper age range of the population increases, there is a greater demand for bungalow accommodation to assist mobility, and this is adding to the demand. A bungalow in this location will provide alternative accommodation to the surrounding two-storey development. It may also free up a larger two-storey house elsewhere in the borough for family occupation by allowing elderly people to move to more suitable modern bungalow accommodation such as this. In conclusion, Chair, a bungalow in this location will not be detrimental to the Innings Way street scene or indeed the open space to the rear, as it will sit below the general ground level, the existing ground level, and most importantly, it will provide an attractive dwelling that will increase the accommodation available for the elderly in line with local and national policy. Issues such as levels, landscaping, fencing, land conditions can be dealt with by planning condition, as they were on the three houses further along Innings Way that was approved last September. Chair, I hope that's helpful. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Alan Cholton. Before we take question, there's one question is, the other development that you mentioned, was that built by your client?
Yes, it was.
Right, okay, thank you. I've got Phil Burke. Anybody else question? Phil Burke.
Yeah, thanks. Just a quick one, Mr. Charlton. We've heard tonight from the planning officer that the drainage report's not been submitted. Is there any reason why the drainage report's not been submitted? And also, should you have refusal of the access using the car park, have you got any further plans in place to make other access points?
Dealing with the drainage, there is no reason to believe there's going to be a problem with drainage. It was not submitted, I think, because the planning officer intended to recommend refusal. There is no reason why it can't be dealt, in my view, why it can't be dealt with by condition. And if the approval is to be held up for ground investigation conditions, then it can be dealt with in the same time that it takes to deal with that. With regard to the access, I agree with your planning officer that there is really no suitable alternative access because of the lie of the land and the various land uses. Although recommendation is, although there is an objection to the use of the land from the landowner, negotiations are taking place, and we feel that it's likely that these will result in agreement sometime in the future. However, this is not guaranteed, and I would accept the granting condition that has been suggested again by one of your officers.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else has any question for the applicant? Okay. The other one, there was a question is the stable of the reports or stable of the land.
Yes, I can take that question, Chair. The land stability report is the one that the National Planning Practice Guidance requires in advance of a decision to grant planning permission with conditions. It's that report that would be required in advance. You'll see a comment from the drainage officer noted in the report that says that any retaining structures could also affect drainage. So it might be this question that you're posing to the applicant's agent.
Can I reply to that? Yes, yes. We'd be quite happy to deal with the land stability issues and the drainage at the same time. I accept what you say. Drainage can in fact affect land stability, and we would look at that. But can I suggest that if that is required, then is it possible to delegate? If committee are mindful to approve the application, is it possible to delegate it to chairman and vice, for example, until the land stability and drainage information has been provided before a decision can be issued?
Okay, thank you. And that will committee will obviously committee will discuss that in detail how we deal with that. Okay, I've got Ward Councillor Billy Shearing. Welcome to meeting.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for allowing me to call this application in. I called it in because of a couple of reasons, and it's important that you know this. That when I noted the plans and I saw that the bungalow was set back from the street scene, it reminded me of a similar development on Hayward Road in Castleton, where you've got a street scene, and then between the gable ends of two houses, there is a house built behind them. So it's not as though it was something that was unusual. And the other one was that the possibility of it being a bungalow. Of all the developments I've got going in Castleton, or we've got going in Castleton, there has not been one directive bungalow being built. And it's quite sad is that. And I felt that because of that situation, this could highlight the need of bungalows, and with a bit of publicity, this could possibly happen. Looking at some of the reasonings, number 19 to 25, so there's a big gap between the two houses that are in there, you know, for the private car park. So there's access into the site, which isn't a problem. The elevation at 0.5, that could be the level of the development. That could be done with conditions, I'm sure it is. It can't be at odds with the street scene because you won't see it, it's behind everything. That's what I saw. And the other thing about it is, on that development, we've got detached houses, with semi-detached houses, with flats, with 5 stories apartments. So it's a mixture of all sorts in that street scene in that area. I noticed there's a 5-year land supply that Daniela has come up with. I'm really pleased that we have got that. But I do have a lot of that happening in Castleton. And when it was being turned down because it was protected open space, I felt a little bit aggrieved at that because we had been building on a lot of that of late. And I'm sure that just one small development on what I call scrubby land would be a benefit. The final one, the sports facility, which Councillor Rush was wondering who benefited by the development of these houses, is Mayfield Amateur Rugby Club. Okay, Chair, that is really my reason for bringing it in. I did feel as though it needed to be discussed with the elected members to see if they felt that there was a good reason for a bungalow to be built in this on this development, which is hidden behind the others, if I could say that. Thank you, Chair, for giving me a chance to speak.
You're welcome. Anyone want to speak to question for Councillor Billy Shearing? You frightened them all, Billy. Thank you. All right, it's open to discussion now. I've got Peter Rush, anyone else? And then Phil Burke, and then Assam Rashid. Right, Peter Rush. Can't hear you, Peter.
One thing that shuts me up. Yeah, my concerns are in such a short period of time that the things like building the two houses between 3 and 7, 5 and 7, looking at the protective open space, the need for bungalows, which is throughout the borough, I can assure you, and everything seems to have changed overnight for just one building that's in keeping with the area that it's built in. Perhaps we've got a problem of getting through the open car park space, but everything just seems to have overturned, changed. There's nobody here to appeal it, and it's a discussion that we're having, obviously, between the council and the officers. I'm a bit disappointed that one bungalow being built that's badly needed comes up to so much opposition, which seems to have changed overnight. Thank you.
Thank you. Phil Burke, then Assam Rashid. And anybody else after that? John
Yes,
Taylor. John Taylor. Okay, Phil Burke.
Thanks, Chair. It's clear tonight, listening to the applicant who's built on this land in the past, that we do have policy changes happening all the time, and he's just actually been caught out on this change. He's a good operator. He's worked with the council in the past, especially to develop the site on the protected open land. And I think, given what he said to us tonight, the applicant, that we don't have a ground to refuse this. I understand totally of the officer's recommendations to refuse it, but given the fact that we've been told we can put conditions on, the Grampian condition, we can request a condition for the drainage report, and then we can delegate the decision in relation to the parking, the access, I should say, then I feel there's no need to refuse this application. I'm more than happy to approve this, put forward this application for approval.
Okay. Assam Rashid and then John Taylor.
Thanks, Chair. I think the application has been discussed very thoroughly with my colleague, Councillor Billy Shearing. And I'm Ward Councillor for Castleton, and I know this area very well. The two things I'm really surprised with officer, he hasn't got a proper definition of protected open land, how we can restrict it, because obviously there's a previous examples. There's already been developed lands in the borough. The second, as Billy mentioned, that there is always a mixed type of housing, terraced housing, 3-bedroom semi and bungalows. And even Mayfield Rugby Club, they use this land as our protected land. The second one, which is going to mixing this parking facility within the planning material, I think this is not the planning material. We should be very careful and very clear that we're not mixing these two things with this application for the refusal. So there is no need to consider this planning, because obviously in future the circumstances can be changed. The third, obviously, the same, which I'm going to obviously request members to consider, that we need bungalows in our borough, especially in Castleton. We need bungalows, and there was another planning already approved, the same street. So I'm really surprised what is the reason to this application has been delayed, and without any reason it was delayed. And so this, I'm glad Billy recalled this application, and we are discussing this one. I'm really, if Phil Burke is proposing with the conditions, I'm really want to second this application on this moment.
Councillor John Taylor.
Thanks, Chair. My initial thoughts when I read this one was, why would you want to refuse it? It's one bungalow, it's taking up an area of land that isn't being used for anything else. Listening to the officer and trying to think about this very carefully though, I'm not convinced it's the right thing to do. It will only provide one house, and as much as we need houses, they need to be the right houses in the right places, I do feel. There's an issue with the access to it. It doesn't fit in with the street scene properly. And I'm being convinced by the officer on this one. And it feels to me like the officer is actually right. You'd have to take your bins, was it 25 yards or 75 yards to actually get them to a point where they can be picked up. It feels like the house is in the wrong place, and we start to get the scattergun approach of houses. Not for a large development where we would have huge benefits for our local communities, but because of one house, and it feels like the wrong thing to do to me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Peter Rush. Anybody else wants to come in?
Yeah, just a quick one. In relation to the land it's going to be built on, this is a piece of scrub land. We're trying to enhance the area to keep it nice and clean, but blending well with all the new builds and everything else. To have a piece of scrub land not being used, overgrown, it can attract all sorts of fly tipping and everything else. I think we should take that on board as well. This is your unused piece of land, and someone wants the opportunity to build on it. At least it will enhance the area and it'll tidy the area up as well.
Thank you, Phil. I've got Sean Neal, and then anybody else? Sean Neal.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I looked at this as well. I know the area. I can remember when it was Castleton Moor Cricket Club. That bit there looks like the tea rooms were situated there. Well, that's a long time ago, and since then that area has been developed, and I've been on planning 9 years now, and I think this is about the third application we've had, third or fourth application, and they've all been a little bit controversial, whereas they're encroaching on Greenbelt land, and they're all subsequently passed because the benefits outweigh the green belt conditions. So I took a trip down Google, where you go, and I went past that opening there. So you reverse back on your Google, and it looks as though it's been built for it. Never mind it. It's a private car park. It looks as though it's crying out for something at the end of that. And I wondered if that was one of the original reasons to put that there, because there's no signage saying that is a private car park. It may be, but there's nothing. It doesn't look as though it's policed in that way. And I support I'm going to support Phil, the Vice Chair, on this on his recommendation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Daniel, do you want to come in? You said.
Yeah, if that's possible, Chair. I mean, there's a lot of discussion focused here on the protected open land policy. The protected open land policy does talk about character and a house being located in the right place. Now, one of the reasons that we're recommending refusal is because of the location of the site at the back of a car park. You know, if a dwelling was proposed to come forward at the back of a car park when the developer had first applied for the development at Innings Way, we would have said that the bungalow appeared isolated. They were putting potentially elderly or disabled people, if that was proposed, at the back of a development rather than at the front. There's no pedestrian access onto the pavement. They don't have a front door that they can walk out of like the other properties in the development has. There is also the fact that the other applications that have been referred to for the infilling developments further along the street, those properties did have that relationship directly with the street. This particular site is located right at the back of the development, and any occupier of this property has to cross the car park to access their front door. Any occupant would have to travel over 25 metres with their bins. They'd have to present them on the highway of Innings Way. So whilst there is a lot of discussion about the general protected open land policy and the restrictive nature of them, this decision is about more than just the protected open land policy. It is about the location of this bungalow. I mean, if this is occupied by an elderly person, a disabled person, or any person, in fact, a person with children, they would also have to walk 25 metres across a car park to their front door. And that is part of the discussion that members should be having there. The car park is retained. There's no facility to put a separate pedestrian route through. The footpath of Innings Way can't be continued to the development because it's too narrow at the access point. So there are other reasons in the recommendation before you tonight, outside of just protected land policy. It relates to also the National Planning Policy Framework, which seeks to secure good design and good places and seek to ensure new development is integrated with existing developments. And the question I pose to members is this location at the back of the development really the best place to put a bungalow which may be occupied by someone with a protected characteristic? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do you want to come in, Mobeen?
Yeah, also, I mean, in terms of what Daniel has said and continuing on from there, it's not been demonstrated by the applicant that there is a need for the bungalow, and that it couldn't be provided on other sites in the borough rather than the protected open land. So like Daniel has said, we have got a 6.8 year housing land supply in the borough itself, and that one bungalow could be accommodated somewhere else quite easily. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Councillor Rashid, Chair.
Asim Rashid.
Actually, Chair, I should declare this interest at the start of the meeting because this is in my ward. So I've just come in the meeting with open mind. So I just want to declare this one. I'm coming in the meeting with an open mind, so it should be minuted.
Lorraine Adamson, are you okay with that?
Sorry, just unmuting myself. Yes, Chair, as the councillor said, it should have been recorded at the beginning, but he's recorded it now that he's the ward councillor, but he's come to the meeting with an open mind, and that's in accordance with Section 25 of the Localism Act 2011.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair.
There's application in front of you. I mean, hearing tonight, there are a number of concerns, and I'm sure this can be solved, this issue, but with addressing these concerns. So it's up to the members how they like to solve this issue, because there are a number of concerns which can be solved, and I think there's a way forward. But these concerns need to be addressed.
Chair, there's a planning. If it's been moved and seconded that the application be granted, the planning officer said earlier that it would be any permission would have to be subject to the completion of a satisfactory land stability and drainage report.
And the
and additional and other conditions to be determined by the head of planning.
Yeah, and the second condition, Peter, sorry, Chair, is the Grampian condition as well.
Accessing the Grampian condition. Yeah.
And sorry, Chair, can I just clarify for someone who's moving, obviously someone's moved to approve it against officer recommendation. Obviously the report is needed that's been talked about, the Grampian condition, but obviously all of the condition will need to be put on if the members are happy, or if the councillor who's proposed it is happy. Can that be delegated to the head of planning in consultation with yourself, Chair? Those aspects of it, and then perhaps Peter can read out a proposal on that basis.
Thank you, Lauren. I think we need to have a vote, and then we can add these conditions that as required. That's if his vote is carried. Is that okay, Lauren?
Yeah, it's just I'm just trying to clarify the motion that members are voting on, and if members are voting to approve the application, can that be subject to obviously the submission of the report and the addition of conditions, and can those two aspects be delegated to the head of planning in consultation with yourself? That's all I'm saying. I'm sure Peter can read out a motion that covers that, but obviously the person who proposed it, the councillor who proposed it, needs to be happy that that is what he's proposing.
Are you happy with that, Phil, or do you want this application?
I'm happy with the subject to conditions, with the additional conditions, the Crampian and the drainage report. I'm fine with that.
On the stable land
And
report.
the stable land report.
Yeah.
And for it to be delegated, Councillor Burke.
Yes, I'm happy with for it to
Delegated
be
to
delegated.
the head of planning consultation with the chair of the committee. Is that what we're saying?
There's two ways you can solve this, Phil. One is to delegate it, or it can be deferred while the reports come back and the committee can solve it. So there's two options.
Chair, I'm happy for it to be delegated.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I will second this one. It should be delegated to chair and head of planning.
Chair, could I just mention as well that a planning reason for departing from the officer's recommendation would also be needed, and that would need to refer to policies in the development plan. There are policies listed in the officer report, if that would assist.
Are you okay with that, Phil, or you need advice on that now?
May need advice on that.
Happy to help there, Phil. If you give me a planning reason, I will assist with policies.
Given the fact, Chair, that we've had applications in the past, as late as last year, where we've had houses and properties built on that land, I think it's only fair that we should allow this application to go through based on previous applications.
I don't think you can relate this to the other. Each applicant comes on his own base, so you can't relate each applicant on that base. Rachel, did you had a question?
Thank you, Chair. Daniela, could it come under P3 as providing an appropriate mix, and it would consider the needs of sections of society?
Yeah, is that policy C3 that relates to housing needs?
It says P3, improving design of new development. It's
So
it's 4 points down.
P3 relates to design of new development, so members could conclude that it's an acceptable location for the development relative to the houses around it. Policy C3 relates to the housing types, so it could be that obviously a bungalow is appropriate in this location under the housing policy.
It does. It says 0.5 is the appropriate site to meet the needs of a specific group, including older people and vulnerable groups.
The only thing members just need to consider is that the applicant, whilst he's referred to it being possibly occupied by someone who's aged over 55, that's not what's proposed in the application. It's not proposed by the applicant. It's just something that could happen.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel, for helping this out. Before we go forward, let's make it clear, these are 4 conditions got to be met to solve this issue. So the what's going on with these conditions, these conditions must be met. Okay, Peter.
Right, the land stability and drainage report being the first one, yeah?
Yeah.
Access to and from the property, the second one?
There's the drainage, land stability report.
Yeah.
And then you got the report for the access Gumpian under the condition. So in other words, it means is if that condition, that car park, it's a no solve issue, the applicant they need to solve it before they'll be able to build. Is that right, Daniel? That's the condition.
I'll just clarify. I think
they make him in plain English so they understand what this means.
I think the recommendation members are, or the resolution that members are seeking here to propose is that they are minded to grant planning permission subject to the submission of a land stability and drainage report by the applicant. and for the assessment of that report to be delegated to the Assistant Director for Planning. And then following that the committee delegate the release of a decision notice with conditions to be determined with the chair of the committee, so appropriate conditions. There are a few other appropriate conditions that might need to be applied, such as the time limit from the commencement of development within 3 years, but the detail of the conditions, I would suggest that the committee defer to the chair in discussion with the relevant officers.
Okay, is that clear to everyone? Yeah, go on, Peter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, so the vote is you're being asked to approve the recommendation is, well, the motion now is to approve the application. So Councillor Burke. Councillor Davidson.
Against.
Councillor Susan Emmett.
Oh.
Councillor Massey.
For.
Councillor O'Neill.
For.
Councillor Rana.
For.
Councillor Rashid.
For.
Councillor Rush.
For.
Councillor Taylor.
Against.
Councillor Winkler.
Sorry, against.
Against. Councillor Zahir.
For.
And Councillor Zaman.
For.
Councillor Ahmed.
Abstain. All gone, yeah?
Yeah, that's carried, Chair.
Yeah, recommendation has been approved, provided with that condition. So thank you very much, Councillor Billy Shearing and Alan Cholton. Next item is item number 6. Is only the appeals. If anybody has any question on that, before we leave, just to remind members, the next planning meeting.
Chair, I think Councillor Rashid wants to speak on this.
Yeah, yes, come on, Rashid.
Oh, thanks, Chair. It's just a quick one. Probably planning officer can give me some update. If planning inspector reject your appeal for a planning application, so can be new application can be submitted, or it's got to be after 2 years?
A new application can be submitted if it's materially different. The period you're referring to is if there are repeat applications that are the same, we can refuse to deal with them as the planning authority because the planning inspector at the government has already given a decision.
But same property, same person can submit application with a different planning application.
Yes, as long as it's different. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
You can admit it as many times as long as the application is on a different type, in other words. No, the next planning meeting has been moved to 18th of March. Just remind the members to make note of it.
I'll send out a revised diary invite tomorrow, Chair.
Chair, is the training scheduled?
Yeah, on 18, yeah. They're going to be a training on 18, which will be starts at 5 and they probably finish 10 to 6 before we go on to planning and licensing meeting. So thank you very much, everybody, for attendance, and good night from me.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. Good night, members.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.
All right.